Welcome back to our channel on this beautiful day. We are thrilled to bring you the latest, most explosive updates from Genoa City. Who is lying? What secret is about to be revealed? Which character might betray their loved one in the next episode? Let us dive straight into the heart-stopping drama unfolding today. The atmosphere inside the grand venue was suffocatingly opulent, a masterclass in high society deception where crystal chandeliers cast a glittering, deceptive light over a room filled with Genoa City's most elite and unsuspecting figures. It was supposed to be a monumental family gathering, a celebration of unity and legacy, but beneath the surface of clinking champagne glasses and forced, polite laughter, a catastrophic storm was brewing. Bill Hamilton, looking visibly frail and physically diminished from his prolonged, mysterious illness, sat near the center of the room, desperately trying to maintain his dignified composure. Hovering over him with a sickeningly sweet facade of absolute devotion was his wife, Hayley Hamilton. She played the role of the doting, concerned spouse with terrifying perfection, adjusting his collar and offering him water, her manipulative sociopathy completely masked by her faux affection. No one in that glittering ballroom could have possibly fathomed that the woman gently stroking Bill's shoulder was the very architect of his agonizing, slow-motion physical demise. The stark, horrifying contrast between the glamorous surface of the event and the rotting, lethal core of their marriage set the stage for a confrontation of epic proportions. Standing in the shadows of the grand hall, Chelsea Lawson was a woman pushed to the absolute limits of her psychological endurance. Haunted by the profound traumas of her own past and driven by a fierce, unyielding need to protect her mother from further collateral damage, Chelsea had reached a breaking point. For weeks, she had silently endured the agonizing suspicion that Hayley was not the savior she pretended to be, but a lethal predator operating in plain sight. Chelsea had meticulously, obsessively gathered every shred of evidence, refusing to be silenced any longer by the polite conventions of high society. The burden of carrying this explosive, life-altering secret had weighed heavily on her soul, but tonight, that burden would be transformed into a weapon of undeniable truth. In her trembling hands, she held the ultimate instrument of Hayley's destruction, a digital audio recording containing the chilling, irrefutable memories and confessions captured by Danny. It was not merely a piece of digital data, it was a ticking time bomb, armed and ready to obliterate Hayley's carefully constructed reality and expose the venomous serpent hiding within the Hamilton family. The ambient, classical music wafting through the ballroom was abruptly severed by the sharp, piercing screech of microphone feedback, instantly plunging the crowded venue into a stunned, breathless silence. Chelsea stepped out from the shadows and ascended the small stage at the front of the room, her presence commanding an immediate, chilling authority. The clinking of glasses ceased, the polite murmurs evaporated into the heavy, tense air. Chelsea's eyes, burning with a cold, calculated righteous fury, locked directly onto Hayley. The sudden, dramatic shift in the room's energy was palpable, a physical weight pressing down on the chests of the elite guests. Hayley's faux smile faltered for a fraction of a second, a micro-expression of sudden, sharp panic flashing across her perfectly manicured features before she forced her mask back into place. Bill looked up at Chelsea with a mixture of mild confusion and weary curiosity, completely oblivious to the fact that the foundation of his entire existence was about to be violently ripped out from under him in front of everyone he knew and respected. Chelsea's voice, steady and amplified, echoed through the cavernous hall, carrying the weight of absolute, undeniable truth. She did not mince her words. She spoke of profound betrayal, of a lethal predator who had infiltrated their inner circle under the guise of love and matrimony. She framed her impending revelation not merely as an accusation, but as a desperate, necessary act of salvation to protect a man who was being systematically murdered in his own bed. The guests exchanged bewildered, horrified glances as Chelsea introduced the audio recording. She explained that it was a meticulously captured memory from Danny, a covert recording that detailed a conversation so dark and sinister that it defied human comprehension. The suspense in the room became physically agonizing, a suffocating tension that wrapped around the throats of the audience as Chelsea slowly, deliberately reached over and pressed the play button on the sound system. There was no turning back now. The truth was about to be unleashed with the devastating force of a hurricane. The audio reverberated through the massive speakers, crisp and terrifyingly clear. It was Danny's recorded recollection, capturing the unmistakable, chillingly calm voice of Hayley Hamilton, engaged in a deeply sinister conversation with Randy. The entire ballroom froze in collective horror as Hayley's recorded voice detailed the exact, horrifying methodology of her poisoning plot against Bill. She discussed the calculated, incremental dosages of the lethal toxin, ensuring it would mimic the symptoms of a natural, degenerative illness to avoid suspicion from Dr. Madison Montgomery and the rest of the medical staff. The sociopathic ambition, the cold, calculating greed underlying her words as she plotted the slow, agonizing assassination of her husband for financial gain, echoed off the walls. To hear a wife casually, clinically orchestrate the murder of the man she claimed to love was a display of human depravity so profound that it left the audience physically nauseated and entirely speechless. Bill Hamilton's real-time reaction was a portrait of absolute, soul-crushing devastation. As Hayley's recorded words filled the air, the remaining color violently drained from his already pallid face, leaving him looking like a ghost. His frail knees buckled beneath him, forcing him to grip the edge of the linen-draped table with white-knuckled desperation, just to keep from collapsing onto the marble floor. The severe physical toll the poison had taken on his body was suddenly, completely eclipsed by the excruciating psychological agony of this ultimate betrayal. He slowly turned his head to look at Hayley, the woman who had shared his bed, whispered words of love, and pretended to nurse him back to health. He did not see a wife, he saw a monster, a cold-blooded executioner who had been slowly draining the life from his veins. The horrifying realization that his suffering was not a cruel twist of fate, but a calculated murder attempt, hit him with the devastating, paralyzing force of a freight train. Hayley's immediate response was a frantic, chaotic display of a cornered predator fighting for its life. As the recording ended, her carefully crafted mask of the devoted wife completely disintegrated, revealing the desperate, venomous manipulator beneath. She lunged forward, her voice shrill and trembling with manufactured outrage, screaming that the recording was an absolute fabrication. She wildly pointed her trembling fingers at Chelsea, accusing her of using deepfake technology, of orchestrating a malicious, deranged smear campaign to destroy her marriage. Hayley frantically attempted to gaslight the entire ballroom, spinning a desperate narrative that Chelsea was mentally unstable, obsessed, and driven by a toxic vendetta. She clawed at Bill's arm, begging him not to believe the lies, her eyes wide with a terrifying manic desperation as she tried to salvage the burning wreckage of her lethal conspiracy through sheer, unadulterated volume and denial. Chelsea, however, remained an immovable, impenetrable fortress against Hayley's hysterical, venomous onslaught. She did not flinch, she did not raise her voice, and she did not take a single step back. Her stoic, icy demeanor only served to amplify the pathetic desperation of Hayley's guilt. With surgical precision, Chelsea methodically dismantled Hayley's frantic defenses, pointing out the highly specific, undeniable medical details in the recording details about Bill's unique symptoms and the exact timing of his physical crashes that only the true culprit could possibly know. Chelsea's unwavering resolve was fueled by a fierce, protective fury for her mother and a deep-seated demand for justice. She stared down the woman who had brought so much pain and suffering into their lives, her silence speaking volumes louder than Hayley's frantic screams. Chelsea had come to this event to execute a mission of truth, and she was watching her target unravel exactly as she had anticipated. The reaction of the Genoa City elite was instantaneous and brutal. The opulent ballroom descended into absolute, unmitigated chaos. Gasps of pure horror, whispered venomous condemnations, and shocked, disgusted stares surrounded Hayley from every conceivable angle. The social execution of Hayley Hamilton was happening in real time, a spectacular fall from grace that would be whispered about in the corridors of power for decades to come. Former friends, business associates, and family members physically recoiled, stepping away from her as if she were carrying a highly contagious, lethal disease. They created a wide, isolating quarantine zone of absolute disgrace around the exposed poisoner. The glamorous, high society facade of the event completely crumbled, replaced by a raw, visceral spectacle of human depravity and the devastating consequences of unchecked, murderous greed. Hayley was no longer a respected socialite. She was a pariah, entirely alone in a room full of people. The dramatic, inevitable conclusion to the confrontation was heralded by the wailing sirens of the Genoa City Police Department echoing through the manicured grounds outside. The heavy oak doors of the ballroom were thrust open as uniformed officers, led by seasoned, stern-faced detectives, breached the grand event. The flashing red and blue lights from the cruisers outside bled through the massive windows, casting long, eerie shadows across the elegant, floral decor. This visual shift signaled the abrupt, terrifying transition from a scandalous high society rumor to an active, severe criminal investigation. The net had finally, irrevocably closed around Hayley Hamilton. The authoritative presence of law enforcement instantly quelled the chaotic murmurs of the crowd, replacing the social outrage with the cold, hard reality of the justice system preparing to exact its heavy toll on a woman who thought she was entirely above the law. The police immediately moved to secure the chaotic scene, acting with swift, practiced precision. Detectives approached Chelsea, formally requesting to take possession of the digital audio recording, treating it as the primary, irrefutable piece of forensic evidence in an attempted murder investigation. Simultaneously, a team of officers surrounded the frantic Hayley, forcefully but professionally restraining her as they began reading her Miranda rights. Hayley continued to thrash, weep, and scream her innocence, her manic denials echoing pathetically against the marble columns. The stark, humiliating reality of cold steel handcuffs snapping shut around her wrists marked the absolute end of her reign of terror. As the officers began separating the horrified guests to take official witness statements, the sheer magnitude of Hayley's legal ruin descended upon her, crushing her under the weight of her own sociopathic arrogance. As the police firmly escorted his screaming, thrashing wife out of the opulent venue and into the cold night, Bill Hamilton was left standing amidst the smoking wreckage of his entire life. The devastating truth had finally penetrated his shock, settling into his bones with a heavy, sickening finality. The marriage he had believed in was irrevocably dead, poisoned not just by toxic chemicals slipped into his food and drink, but by an unimaginable, sociopathic greed that defied all logic. He slumped into a nearby chair, surrounded by deeply concerned family members and medical professionals who had rushed to his side, yet he had never felt more profoundly, agonizingly alone in his entire existence. The physical recovery from the toxins ravaging his system would be a long, arduous journey, but the deep psychological scars left by the realization that the woman he loved had tried to murder him would be permanent, indelible marks on his soul. The lingering aftermath of Chelsea's explosive revelation left the entire landscape of Genoa City permanently altered, with burning, unanswered questions hanging heavy in the tense air. Chelsea had undeniably won the battle, fiercely protecting her mother and exposing a lethal, calculating predator to the harsh light of justice, but the broader war for power and survival was far from over. What other dark, buried secrets did Hayley Hamilton hide during her tenure of deception? Will Randy, her co-conspirator on the recording, face the full, devastating wrath of the law for his complicity in the poisoning plot? And how will Bill Hamilton and his fiercely loyal daughter Naomi ever manage to rebuild their shattered legacy from the ashes of this monumental betrayal? This heart-stopping chapter has closed, but the ripples of this public execution will continue to tear through the lives of everyone involved, leaving viewers breathless and desperately hungry for the next dark twist in this unending saga.